A History Part 1. Exanos Prime. Long, gnarly-limbed trees climbed their way into the brilliantly lit Zircadian sky, while insectoids of every conceivable description crawled, hopped, and slimed their way through the dense forest canopy. A giant Xylonetti wasp buzzed its way laboriously towards a cavernous hollow set deep into the base of a 1,000-year-old tree. Clasped within its powerful claws was a very large and very dead arachnid. Some distance back, and moving like a wave of whispering shadows, a blanket of 9-limbed spiders stealthily swept their way across the forest floor, guided by the scent of their fallen comrades' pheromones. The army of arachnoid warriors continued to relentlessly track the scent all the way to the cavernous entrance of the Xylonetti hive, gathering in ever-increasing numbers around the base of the notoriously infamous tree. An unusually large and powerful spider, marking its Jihari, pushed its way roughly through the mass of Shimatiri warriors and towards the dark, gaping maw of the hive. He turned and rose up dramatically in order to address his army with a melodic sequence of chirps and clicks.
This forest has belonged to the Xylonetti since the beginning of time itself, but their reign is at last coming to an end, and ours is just about to begin.
The army chirped riotously in reply to their Jihari general's prophetic words, but Shikander immediately raised his 3 forelimbs high into the air, bringing them all back to a deathly silence.
We have at long last discovered where our vile enemy slumbers. I promise you, then, that by the rise of another sun, the forest will belong to the great Queen Xiana.
The ground began to shake with the thundering rumble of bloodthirsty agreement.
Hear me now. The stupid and unthinking beast cannot fear what its own mind cannot see.
As the general continued to speak, he waved a forelimb towards the dark, gaping mouth of the hive.
The Xylonetti will fly mindlessly into the spear of their own demise, for it is in their nature to do so.
The Jihari general fell to stony silence, and as the army settled in to wait, a giant Xylonetti drone flew into view, dragging a massive centipede laboriously behind it. The drone, upon observing the seemingly endless sea of arachnids, released the centipede from its grip and started to emit a piercing, high-pitched buzz while hovering close to the mouth of the hive.
Behold the futility of a mind hopelessly trapped behind the walls of its own base instinct.
Shikander bellowed vitriolically while pulling a long wooden spear capped with a sharp iron tip from the back plate of his central thorax. Gripping it firmly with his center and rightmost forelimbs, he took very careful aim before hurling the spear with such blinding speed and ferocity that it cut straight through the bulky abdomen of the Xylonetti drone like it wasn't even there. The hapless drone went into a furious death spiral, spinning its way chaotically down towards the forest floor, where it was instantly swarmed by an ocean of rampaging arachnids. The stinger of the dying wasp impaled and paralyzed several nearby soldiers, and the severed leg of a nearby Shimatiri warrior was sent cartwheeling up into the air. The heroic drone, still tenaciously clinging to life, but with its thorax now deeply pockmarked with dark oozing holes, desperately tried to use its double set of serrated razor-sharp teeth to bite wildly at anything it could connect its mouth to. However, by virtue of sheer numbers and aided by their new death-dealing weapon, the tide was quickly turned, and the chaotic melee was very short-lived, as the wasp was soon shredded into thousands of tiny little pieces. When the minor fracas began to die down, the forest quickly fell to an eerie silence, and the Jihari general again called out to his obediently loyal army.
Hear now the sound of their mindless rage. Remember it well, for it is the beating drum of their own coming doom.
An angry, rumbling buzz began to rise up ominously from deep within the heart of the ancient tree, and as the giant wasps began to emerge, they found themselves badly bottlenecked at the mouth of their very own hive. Most failed to make it out without first sustaining mortal wounds from the relentless barrage of endlessly thrusting poison-tipped spears. By the time the carnage was finally all over, bloodied mountains of shredded bodies and limbs lay stacked up against the base of the broken and battered tree. In one last act of theatrical violence, the now undefended Xylonetti queen was unceremoniously dragged from her imperial chamber and out onto the killing fields beyond. The defiant queen bravely resisted to the very last, even as her head was savagely torn from her still-living body. The Shimatiri army, bearing witness to such a visceral coup de grace, cheered riotously, deeply intoxicated by their bloodlust. The Shihari general now surveyed his army with a considerable amount of pride.
Now allow me to show you.
The general called out fiercely.
Why mind defeats body?
Sikander solemnly handed the queen's head to a nearby soldier in order to take his bloodied spear in return. Grasping hold of the iron tip, he yanked it forcefully away from the base and then tore the point of a diamond-hard stinger from a dead Xylonetti drone, aggressively jamming it back onto the end of the spear. Finally, he impaled the queen's disembodied head upon it and held it high up into the air for all to see. The forest was immediately filled with the deafening, chittering echo of 1,000,000+ chirping arachnids. As things slowly began to quieten down, the Shimatiri soldiers started to disperse, and the head of the Xylonetti royal was duly taken back to their own nest, whereupon it was presented to the multi-generational Zelestial queen, Ziana. The great queen always kept this most treasured prize very close to her throne as a grand trophy of their historic triumph over the most fearsome arch-enemy that their species would surely ever know.